think we did like a Zoom call or it's like Google Hangouts around the pandemic. I don't think I've actually seen you since like you had a kid, got married, moved back. It's been a while.
Yeah.
It was like, to this day, like people are like, should I get a computer science degree? And I'm like, I always say I had one teacher that I took like in year 3 classes, I learned more by far than every other class combined, you know. Like I'm still a Vim user. I do VS Code now, but with Vim, GitHub and like just, you know, all that stuff. Like the rest of it was like, let's talk about how databases were 20 years ago. It's like, update your slides, dude. I know you're tenured and all, but so I was still kind of coasting on like you need to help start the Asheville Coders thing. Yeah. So I think like you and Will Blasco and people like that are kind of like, I learned more from that than actual school.
Well, that's nice to hear. Yeah, I mean, it was kind of actual school, but yeah. Or at least the classes I guess you took from me was actual school. Yeah. Yeah. So just, I guess like you said that people ask you if you should still go into computer science these days.
Or get a formal degree versus
or get
like
a formal degree. Yeah, versus boot camp. I mean, like it's one of those things that's really, really hard to answer. I mean, if you had asked me probably 5 years ago, it seems like the answer would be much easier. But now it's a little different, in part because the job market is so terrible. And the, you know, there's lots of uncertainty, and whenever there's uncertainty, it's hard to it makes it hard to make predictions, which makes it hard to give advice and that sort of thing. So I mean, I guess the simplest way to look at it is if I were talking to somebody and they were asking me that, I would ask, are you interested in computers or programming, or do you have any reason to believe that you would enjoy it? And if the answer is yes,
that's a good question.
Yeah, exactly. And if the answer is yes, then I would 100% say go for it.
I have the feeling though, since I've been out and met a lot of other people, that people got degrees from places where they had a lot of teachers like you that actually gave a shit and and like somewhat current, you know, with like, hey, you know, like the internet's a thing. I mean, this was like, you know, 12 years ago or whenever you were there, and it was like, nobody even talked about the internet. It was like
I think so.
It was like SQL was like the bleeding edge.
So and I mean there's like so there's challenges that come along with being a professor that that make me sort of sympathetic to that plight, right?
All the bureaucracy.
There's all of that, but you know, you think about like teaching calculus, for instance, like a math professor. They're teaching somewhere like UNCA, like 4 classes a semester, and you know, maybe 2 of those sections are calculus. You know, they might get to teach 1 upper level class and then maybe a statistics class or something like that. But you know, the nice thing about those classes is the content doesn't change.
Yeah, 50 years ago, calculus was pretty much the same.
It was. The teaching methodologies do change, so there is some element of keeping up with changes in the way you teach this stuff, or going to conferences and learning about teaching math in different ways and incorporating that. So there is that reason to sort of update your classes, but at the same time, in computer science, historically, it's like you could teach something one semester and then it'd be completely gone the next one.
Yeah.
And so I think a lot of computer science faculty, what they end up doing is they fall back to sort of like things that have stood the test of time to some extent, in part because that helps them keep their class going and it reduces the number of preps they have to do every semester. But at the same time, you know, it's a really, really hard discipline to teach at a liberal arts college with a high teaching load, because they're like, if you're teaching 4 classes and one of those is software engineering and one of those is database, and then you've got 2 programming classes, it's hard to be current. Right. Yeah,
that is helpful to hear. And I guess you kind of hopped in there and did that. You didn't have to keep doing that for 20 or 30 years there. So I think I was kind of angsty about that when I was at the time. But yeah, I mean, it does make sense. It's like a college is inherently not like the bleeding edge of tech. So, I mean, maybe those classes on threading and operating systems and CPU design, maybe they were timeless computer things that have helped me learn React or something like that.
And I mean, to be fair, like in my experience, all of that stuff was super critical. Like, I think that
fundamentals like hardware, stuff like that.
Maybe not hardware, but multi-threading for sure.
Yeah.
Right. Like,
yeah.
I think sometimes it's really easy to over-index on web stuff, right? Like, so you can sort of say, well, do I really need to know what asynchronous programming is if I'm just going to be like moving divs around in CSS, right?
Right.
And the answer to that is no, you don't. But the goal of the goal of like the degree isn't to really prepare you to move divs around in CSS, right? It's to kind of give you like a full background picture of the discipline and where things have been and where they're going. But I will agree that as a former computer science educator, we're not always great about where things are going, but certainly where things were is really valuable. And concurrency in particular, like multi-threading and stuff, like even if you look at the last decade, it's like completely changed an industry, right? There's been this massive move from multi-threading to asynchronous programming.
And even people just say async now, like my kid's school will be like async, like that language has bled into... It's like meta or algo. It's like they've bled into normal people talk.
Right.
So he's like, yeah, I actually know what those words mean. Yeah, that is helpful to hear that, because I think that's true. That I've noticed people that do the boot camps and stuff, and you might end up with a GitHub portfolio of your React app. Like if you actually test them on show us how you would code this up on the spot and then talk about optimizing it, like big O stuff like that.
Yeah.
That they might not have that. So I might be taking for granted some of those things. You're making me feel like I did actually maybe spend some of that money wisely.
it was wise, right? Like I think you totally did. If for another reason, you got to meet me.
Yeah, right.
So, but I think like I think no, that was just a joke. But I think that
for me that's a serious statement.
But I do, like I would have a hard time even 5 years ago recommend somebody go the boot camp route.
Yeah.
And I've met a lot of really successful people in industry that didn't go through computer science, but it's like they're kind of rare. And I think sometimes we have these narratives of a good example is oftentimes you hear like Mark Zuckerberg, who founded Facebook, oh, well, he dropped out of Harvard. He never got a college degree. So what's the point? But it's like, dude, he got into Harvard.
Yeah.
And
he started at Harvard, did more in those weeks he was there than anyone else that graduated.
But you sort of hear this, like, there is kind of, I mean, and just generally speaking, there's been this major shift in society toward this like anti-establishment thing. And some of that, I mean, it affects every aspect of our lives, but I think in particular, you find a lot of this like, oh, well, I don't need to go to get a college degree, or I don't need to get a bachelor's in
computer
science.
Susceptible to that as a 90s person. Like I will always be fooled by that rhetoric. I'm like, the punks didn't learn scales.
No,
so
I mean,
then I'll apply that to things that maybe it doesn't totally serve.
And it's actually one of the things I love seeing in your clips that you post online. A lot of that stuff that comes up from 90s culture, because I'm also a child of the 90s.
It's hard to shake it. I'm still just like, am I a poser? Like, I mean, it was like during those formative years, it was pounded in so hard that it's even a part now that I admitting you have a degree, like if I play music with people, I have a music degree from before computer science.
Yeah.
It's like, I don't admit that, till later.
Yeah. I used to
mistrust me.
Yeah. I used to be ashamed that I took guitar lessons. Like
right,
when I was 12 and I got a guitar, I took guitar lessons for like a year or maybe a year and a half. And then you're wanting to play in punk bands and stuff, and you're like, oh, I learned everything by ear, you know. And it's like there's kind of this like shame of like feeling
I don't know what chord this is, even though you do.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, I've kind of shifted to the other direction over the years, and like partially, as you get older, you sort of become part of the establishment a little bit.
When you're a middle-aged dad, you're like, it's the jig is up. You know?
Yeah. and so it's but yeah, it really I think it like deeply impacts like some people's view that like, oh, I don't really need a college or a bachelor's degree in computer science, and like I can learn all this stuff in and then get a job, but like I think there is value in going through the computer science degree still versus like just getting a job. And I also think I'm biased. Computers have been such a big part of my life, and it's gone sort of beyond a hobby for me. So it's something that I find completely fascinating, and it's shocking to me that not everybody finds computers as fascinating as I do. Yeah,
let's get into that. Like, what was it? You could do DOS as a kid, or what was your first?
Oh no, so I mean, my dad was an electrical engineer, and so he brought home like a Radio Shack computer. I must have been about 3.
Oh damn.
Or 4. Yeah, I was really young. And I remember, actually maybe I was a little older than that, because I remember we were living in Atlanta at the time, and I can still remember our house, and I remember the day he brought it home and opened it, and like and we would play little games on it. They were games from the 80s, but I got that, and then I think my dad just always had a computer. Like he was always getting a new computer, and then I was always getting hand-me-downs, and I think the one that I learned to program on was the Commodore 64.
That's a common one. Not for me, but I hear that one a lot.
Yeah. And so I got into it then, I mean, mainly learning to play games and like just copying games from friends and that sort of thing. And then I would learn some basic programming stuff. I think I had a book that taught basic programming. I learned that. My dad kind of helped guide me through that. He taught me like the very basics of BASIC. And then I got, at some point I remember getting better at it than him, and I could no longer ask him questions. And without the internet, that was sort of your limit.
Yeah, right.
You can't really go further than that because you got nobody to ask. And it wasn't like there was like a huge community of computer hackers around town that I could ask or friends.
Was it South Carolina? Is that where
I lived in Georgia, and then
Georgia.
I've mostly been in Georgia and South Carolina, short stint in Illinois, and then obviously California for 8 years between my stints.
Yeah, we got to get to that too.
Yeah, but
the new world.
Yeah, exactly. But growing up, that was sort of my entry, and then and then one of the things that always happens, or maybe it doesn't always happen, but like as I got older, there were no outlets for computer stuff, right? And so naturally, maybe not naturally, but the other big part of my life other than computers is music. And I sort of, I remember turning 12 and getting my first guitar, and that was sort of a turning point where I started really, really getting into music. And then as I got into high school and stuff like that, that was really my focus, and more like I was actually very much into English and literature and that sort of thing as well. But computer stuff kind of took a back seat, not because I wasn't interested in it, but because there wasn't really any outlets, right? There wasn't like computer classes at school, and it wasn't like the other kids I went to school with thought being a computer programmer was a cool thing the way they thought being a guitar player was.
Yeah. So. And the internet was like maybe a blinking cursor, but you couldn't go on and find that community there either.
No, and it wasn't. Yeah, and it wasn't until later, like probably, AOL became a thing right around the time when I was graduating from high school. And
I tell kids, like, this is pre-Napoleon Dynamite era. Like, nerds were not cool yet. Like, there's
no, we were still very much maligned.
Yeah, you had to hide it, that part of you in the shadows. That movie changed everything.
I guess when that movie came out, I was already in graduate school, or maybe it was right before graduate school.
I'm oversimplifying it, but I do think of that as like Weezer, there was like hints of like nerd cool.
Yeah.
But it really wasn't. Like Nickelodeon had a little of that, but it was like now it's like it's cool to be a nerd. I mean, sometimes
I think it's the pendulum swings. It was really, it went from like, those harmless nerds to like, oh, hey, they're kind of cool and they, are able to do really neat stuff. And now it's back, but instead of the harmless nerds, it's like
we
the
fear
evil.
them.
Yeah, they're like the evil.
We shouldn't have picked on these nerds. They're going to be the death of us all.
or we were right to pick on them because they're horrible people.
Yeah, right.
That's kind of
once you took bullying out. Now look what they've done.
Yeah, exactly. Once you stop bullying them, that's kind of the way. So it's sort of this pendulum that maybe has swung both directions. Maybe it'll swing back the other one, but for now, it doesn't feel like it.
That's crazy. You started like at 3, though. Have you read Torvald's book?
Which one?
It's the one where he talks about developing the Linux kernel.
Is it called Just for Fun?
I think so.
I think that one I did read probably in about 2002 or 2003.
Yeah, I read it back when I was in school with you. I just found it at the library. It's kind of an autobiography, but he talks about how his grandfather had a computer and he sat on his lap.
Right.
This is maybe the 70s and it was like assembly programming.
Yep.
And I read that and I'm like, God, I'm never going to be like, when you read that, it's like amazing, but you're also like, what? Like that explains how he can just kind of think in binary. Like he can think down on the metal level.
Yeah.
And I've come to realize too, just from hanging out with the club and you and stuff, that like, I'm not full on, like, like I don't live, I just need people around me that are like full on. Like you go home from work and you get the laptop out and look at new and you go to meetups and stuff. Like I do weird stuff like this, which makes no money. So I need people like that. I need somebody around me that is the super like live to code person. And then I'm like, well, I can just ask them when I get stuck. I don't need to be the best. I just need to have that guy.
Yeah, it's so funny. Like I was kind of that guy for a while, but then moving to Silicon Valley, like and living there, I was kind of like in your shoes where I felt like I was never as good as...
Right, you went to the major leagues.
Yeah.
Like, oh,
and
you might have been hot shit in that little North Carolina town. But
yes. and that's exactly what I experienced.
That's why I like working for the government. I'm, like Michael Jordan.
Totally.
The government job.
Yeah. Well, until Elon Musk comes in and with his crew.
Evil nerds.
Yeah. But yeah, I get that. I mean, but that's like sort of a, even outside of computers, right? Like you're gonna. One thing I've learned, and I try to think about this in terms of like my son and trying to, make social connections and try to find people to like other kids for them to hang out with and like.
How old?
He's 5. Yeah, like that sort of thing. And I'm thinking ahead mostly, but like, you always like. Raise your skill level to the people you surround yourself with in some extent.
Totally.
And I felt like a good software engineer before I moved to Silicon Valley. And I got there and was like, oh my God, this is crazy how good
but
everybody
you have the
is.
soft skills, like the communication stuff too. I think that I've always tried to lean on that. It's like I might not be the best coder, but a lot of times that guy's an asshole, so I can sort of just remain likable and communicate with normal people. You seem like you have that skill as well. Yeah,
you'd be surprised. I think a lot do. A lot of the really good software engineers I've worked with do actually have people skills. I mean, okay. I think that's part of it, right? Like, right. I think, I think that's. Software engineering is a team sport. Right, it always is. If you're like doing it in solo on one project, you're probably not seeing the actual. Like where the problems, the real software problems come in, right? Because it's really about writing code that communicates to other people on your team and them being able to effectively read that code and understand it and have context, right? And so it is a team sport, and I think in any team sport you've got to have that kind of team player mindset, and so sort of that alpha nerd kind of asshole thing, while it certainly does exist. For me, in my experience, it's relatively rare to find somebody who's done really well as a software engineer and hasn't at least developed some basic social skills.
Yeah, and it might be kind of more of a minor leagues thing. Like I always wanted to be able to do like all these creative things at night. So I went to a startup for my last gig, and I was just like, everyone was like 32 to 28, no kids. Just at the beginning of their careers, just burnout marathon. Yeah. Like I'm trying to do marathon. They're doing burnout tempo, going to meetups every night. And it was just like all alpha. Like I was the most miserable And I was like, I'm going to back this salary level down a little bit. Like,
Yeah.
it's unlimited PTO. You can be your weird self. Here's a ton of money. And I was like, it was the most miserable I'd ever been.
I'm sorry to
it might have just been that particular place.
Well,
It's very volatile, doubling in size, halving in size. The product's this. Next week, the product's this.
Yeah.
Now it's this. That person's fired that's in charge of what the product is. It was just like, what? I couldn't ever like just take a breath, or like by the time I worked on something, it would not be relevant anymore.
Yeah,
and ruining my like home life and everything. I just couldn't keep up.
Absolutely. I mean, and startups, tech startups have that kind of that reputation. I can't speak to startups. I'm working for a startup right now, but it's a very different type of startup. And the way I fell into it's kind of a weird story, but it's definitely not like that sort of Silicon Valley startup mentality that I hear a lot about. It honestly feels like a pretty good pace where I'm working now, and what you described, I couldn't work effectively in that environment either. Because, but to me it sounds like that's more of a, and I know nothing about the company you worked for, but like it sounds like that would be more of a leadership problem than.
I think there was a lot of that too, and it was weird. I'm such an achiever, I didn't really gain clarity on that until afterwards. Like I'm so like, I need to be like good at things and feel like I'm perceived that way. So it really like messed with my head in a way there. It was like a bad breakup or something where it took a year to like kind of sort through it all and be like, yeah, that wasn't my fault. Actually, that was just not a good fit for me. And actually like I learned more at that job than it was. I mean, it's a good thing to do when you are starting, but I have a family and I'm doing all these weird creative things. So I learned all this stuff that then I brought to the government, and now they're like, who is this guy? He's like, who's this whiz kid? He knows everything. So I wouldn't change it, but I'm also like, I'll never go back.
Yeah, I mean, for me,
mental health is like
totally
so important.
And there's also just a lot to be said for being in a role that you really excel at, right? Like one where you don't feel like you have to compete, where you just sort of get to be who you are, get to kind of do your own thing, and you immediately, just by virtue of doing that, gain the respect of your peers. And like you mentioned, they think you're a whiz kid. That's like priceless.
And they think I'm a kid.
Oh, right, of
That's
course.
what's great about it too.
Yeah,
work somewhere where everyone's old.
And the older, right?
Because I was the oldest one. I was like in my 40s on the engineering team of like 60. I think there was like one dude older than me.
Yeah,
at the startup.
Dude, when I started at
like
Netflix, I was 36 and I was the youngest person on my team. It was great.
Yeah. So that's part of my story. I'm like, I had this one great teacher. I learned more from him, and then he was stolen away by Netflix at like immediately as soon as I was like trying to sign up. And you were there for like a little while.
4 years.
And then Facebook?
And then Facebook for 4 years.
And then you took a hiatus after that?
So when we moved back to Asheville, I was working for Facebook, and I ended up taking 6 months off and ended up going back, and I worked for Roku, the TV company, for about a year and a half.
Yeah.
And then quit that one just to kind of just do my own thing for a bit. I got the job at Netflix back when I was teaching at UNCA.
Yeah. And so what's that like? Having been out all the way to the edge of the country where all that happens, working for brands that anyone in the world would recognize. Yeah. The name of.
I mean, it was great when I was working at Netflix at the time, and it was terrible when I was working at Facebook, because it was like it was sort of an interesting change for me, because 2013 Netflix was incredible. It was, in terms of reputation, it was a place where we were fighting against the big internet providers, and we were doing something new. We were against traditional media, and it kind of felt like we were really sort of like back to the whole punk rock feeling. Totally. We were kind of like fighting against the power. And so that felt great, right? That was really cool, and people loved Netflix. And that was, I joined, I think we had released, I think Orange is the New Black was their second big original program.
It's changed so much.
It has.
Stand-up was just kind of starting then too.
Right.
And now it's like the place for that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so original content was just coming out. People were really excited about original content. Like while I was there, Stranger Things came out, these really like watershed moments in streaming TV. And everybody loved it and everybody loved us. And then I went to Facebook, and I went to Facebook probably less than a year before Cambridge Analytica happened. And it became the most hated company in the country.
Yeah.
And so it was a huge
I don't know
difference.
if it's really swung back on that. It's like everyone hates it and uses it all the time. It's this weird thing where it's like, well, if you hate it so much, maybe you don't
I mean,
live on there.
I don't really know what I don't have my finger on the pulse of like Facebook hate anymore like I did when I worked there. But so I don't really know where the general stand is. I know people tend to really like Instagram, and people. I'm still surprised to see like young people show up on Facebook a lot now.
Yeah, it is weird.
I don't know if that's a new thing, but there was a while when I think it felt like everybody thought Facebook was lame and.
Like your grandparents are on there, so why would you want to? Like, I'm kind of like would have been happy to stay with Facebook. I mean, I wouldn't be on any of it if I weren't doing stuff like this and trying to get booked. But Instagram has felt more like it was like, here's my comedy, here's my art. Whereas Facebook kind of feels more like, here's pictures of my kid's first day of school, and I don't even really care to put those on the internet, honestly.
Yeah, totally.
So Instagram kind of lends itself to more like treating it like a art project or a business.
I totally agree.
But you triggered a memory for me though. I think I talked to you and like asked you about leaving Netflix, and I think you were like, it's like it was kind of like stable and like too like easy. I was like, what, are you crazy like that? you were like it's not like it's kind of a place where you can just chill and like have your code and just relax.
Yeah.
I think you said something like it was too relaxing or something. Maybe it was just like before you had a kid and you're like,
it's kind of a weird story. And my perspective on why I left Netflix actually changed quite a bit over the years.
I'll bet after being at Facebook those years, you might have looked back and been like, oh, that actually was.
Well,
did you ever regret leaving?
Yeah, a lot. I mean, not only leaving, but just the circumstances around it were kind of unfortunate, I think. I mean, the reason I ended up like the way I kind of so I think always as you get older, your narrative on things change, right?
Totally.
Like, and so certainly the things I told you at the time were true, but what really happened, I think, was I lost my dad. He died in 2017, a few months before I left Netflix. And I think like in retrospect, it was really the grief and feeling like I was feeling uneasy, just like managing the grief of losing my dad while at the same time working at Netflix. Because when my dad died, I ended up taking like 3 weeks off. I flew back out here where my mom was, and I helped her get there's a lot of bureaucracy that comes with death that's kind of a pain to deal with, especially when you're grieving. So I was the one who was helping my mom manage that. And then I don't think I had time to grieve correctly, because after those 3 weeks were up, I just went right back to work. And it wasn't because they were forcing me back. It was like, oh, I'm ready to go back to work. And I think like, I think in retrospect, I was sort of feeling that grief, but and I don't know if you've ever experienced like serious grief before, but like grief materializes in really weird ways.
Yeah.
And so for me, like the way it materialized was that I'm unhappy in my job. And like I basically was just feeling this like kind of discomfort, this pain. And I was just like saying this is obviously because of the job. And it didn't take me, those days in Silicon Valley, it was really easy. You just go interview and you get a couple of offers and then you decide what you want to do. And I think I just kind of, wasn't managing my grief well. And I thought, so I thought the job was the problem. And so I was like, I'm just going to go get a new job, because obviously this job is problematic in so many different ways. And it was, I mean, the things I told you were true. There was kind of this, and I can talk a little bit more about that. And Netflix, by the way, has changed a lot. So some of those criticisms I had of it before, at least to my understanding, aren't quite as valid as they used to be.
And to me, they didn't even sound like criticisms. I almost heard it as like, it's just a little too relaxed or something.
It was.
What?
What I
play more guitar.
Yeah, probably what I said, and because this is one of the ways I was thinking about it at the time was that Netflix used to have this like policy of like everybody's a senior software engineer, and there was no levels above that, and there were, really were no levels below that. It was like everybody. It was very flat.
That's kind of punk rock too,
Yeah, it's very egalitarian. And that a lot of people still like Netflix is not like that anymore. But like it was something that drew a lot of people in. But one of the side effects of that was that you sort of grow a lot as a software developer, and you want to take on larger projects. You want to start mentoring, and you basically want to grow your impact relative to the company. And at Netflix, at least at the time, it always felt like there was a limit to that, unless you wanted to become a manager, right? And I think like I really started feeling that I was sort of hitting the ceiling, in the sense that like I had written some software that was pretty mission critical to play back on devices like smart TVs and stuff, and essentially I was the only person owning this piece of software, and the way I started thinking about it at the time was like, this is taking up all my time. I can't really learn anything new because I'm constantly focused on this. It'd be great, it'd be great if we could create a team to own that software. I could mentor them, help them like take care of it, and
move
then
on
I could
to the next thing.
Move on to something else. And and nobody explicitly said this, but the attitude of Netflix at the time was, why do we need a team when we have you? Right. And there was really no easy way for me to move or change teams or change projects, or because I was on this critical
And you still had to keep maintaining it, and it wasn't just like, that's done.
Yeah.
Every few weeks I have to fix a bug or something.
Correct.
Yeah.
So it became kind of easy in the sense that it was
that does sound like a legit trap, actually. I mean, I don't want to be stuck on anything I've done creatively or at work, that is kind of the kiss of death for your career once you just kind of start staying on something.
It really is, yeah. And I wanted to grow, and I wanted to do some different things, and like I said, I was kind of going through this grief thing, so I probably wasn't.
Yeah, they even say like when you're grieving, like I've heard my parents are still alive, but I've heard that they say like, don't make any major decisions, don't like like you might, like you're saying, it can kind of manifest in some way.
Yeah, totally. And I think I think in retrospect, leaving Netflix at that time was a mistake. In the sense that like, I think if I had given it time, I could have figured out how to work things out, and I could have, I think things could have gotten better. I think it was a rash decision, and But in the end, it's like anything like that. I had a really good after. So part of the transition here was like, I was thinking, if I go to Facebook, or any other job I took, but I just happened to take the one at Facebook. But like, I was like, all my problems will be solved. I will feel happy again. Oh, yeah. Right?
I still do something like that every year. Like, I still make that mistake.
Yeah, exactly. And so yeah, totally.
I know what the problem is. I just got to change this one thing. Then I won't be so miserable.
Correct.
Like, a year later, I'm like, why do I keep thinking?
Yeah. And it's not. So I mean, my first year at Facebook was brutal. Like, in the sense of like, I was grieving. I wasn't, we talked about good engineers who are assholes. I was probably very much on that spectrum. And
when you feel defensive, it'll bring it out of you, right? When you're trying to prove yourself. Yeah.
When you're trying to prove yourself, and you start to get competitive, your emotional regulation is lower. I didn't do like my first year. In retrospect, I'm lucky I didn't get fired that first year because of my mental health was really, really bad.
I don't think I talked to you in your first year. I think I talked to you a few years in, but I do remember like it might have just been that moment, but it just seemed like there was a lot going. Like it was like, whoa, that just looks like, and you're doing a lot of intense thinking. Like I think your hair and like just the shot around you. You're like I was like, man, that's what it's like on the bleeding edge. I don't think I'd survive out there.
I mean, to be fair, that was also the pandemic, and our son,
right.
Our son was born in December of 2019, and the pandemic hit in March of 2020. So we had like 3 months where my mom came once and my wife's parents were supposed to come, but they couldn't. But then my wife also worked in big tech. And so we both had very demanding jobs. And then we also had a toddler or a baby. And
so that makes sense. And just, I forgot about the COVID. That was just the time you're like peeking out your window, just getting crazier, like regardless of your career. You're just,
exactly.
Just a bunch of unhinged
psychos.
We all were.
we were. It was a like I was. My wife and I were talking about this the other day. I mean, the only way to describe like if you sit down and you actually think back to those first months of COVID, where like we would order groceries and they would be delivered to our house. I remember wearing a mask and going out on the porch and scrubbing them.
Yeah.
You know,
I do remember like wiping Honey Nut Cheerios down. Like,
exactly.
This could be the thing that makes us not all die.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean it's trauma, right? Like I think we were like traumatized, and I think anytime you get past something, you know, when you think back, it's. Well, maybe this isn't always true. Sometimes when you think back, things actually feel worse than they did in the moment. But COVID, for some reason, is something that I feel like when I talk to people about it, we don't give it enough credit for how scary it actually was.
Yeah, right.
It was terrifying.
Yeah, it was like we've all seen like the outbreak monkey from when you're. I mean, you have that story in your head like it's gonna happen anyway, and then it was like now it's really happening. Like it felt like a zombie apocalypse.
It really did,
especially in those early days where it's just like you'd hear one thing from like a reliable person, then a different thing. But then at some point, it's just like you're just exhausted with
you burned out.
Yeah. And then we like totally didn't even really stop the spread or anything. It's just kind of here now.
It's wild. But I mean, like to get back into the, you said, you know, it felt like the zombie apocalypse. I don't think we give it enough credit. Like we lived very close to the San Jose airport. Right, so we had planes flying over our house all the time, and they just stopped one day.
Yeah.
There's no planes. There's nobody walking around.
Yeah.
There's like, it's just like we lived very close to downtown San Jose, foot traffic all the time. It was just like, everything was just silent. It was like 28 days later.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, like
totally.
It was, and
I want to see that new one. It's on my list.
Yeah, mine too. Yeah, but like going out and like even like going, I don't remember. Like I feel like there was a stretch of time because I run a lot, and there was a stretch of time when I was even scared to go out running. But I do remember actually going out running probably the first couple times. I don't remember how long it was after COVID hit, but wearing a mask while running.
Yeah.
and like just these trails that just used to be full of people, and like, I mean, just so much activity all the time were just like completely empty, and you just felt like you were in the middle of nowhere, but you're in downtown San Jose, California, and it's like, it's wild.
Yeah, it is crazy. And I mean, I'm totally into vaccines. I got vaccinated, all that, but I do feel like the trauma of that is still with us in a way. Like we're kind of already heading towards virtual too fast, and then that like we never really quite came back. Like that was just it wasn't gradual anymore. It's like now you can order everything online. Now you can kind of not be in physical proximity of people. And that's, I don't know, we're still kind of figuring all that out.
Yeah. I mean, I think so. I think it's been wild.
And AI now, I mean, we got to talk a little bit about AI because like, you know.
Absolutely.
I didn't even start using a chatbot until I'm a slow adopter. I got a cell phone late, you know, like I like, you know, the command line. I like the timeless stuff. But I started using ChatGPT like at some point earlier this year because it's like, it's the same reason I got a smartphone. It's like, I'm in this industry. I'm going to lose a competitive advantage if I ignore it.
Sure.
And now it's like, I mean, you know how compound interest works for your retirement. Like it's hard for us, our linear minds to, I mean, it's just, I'm using like a, you know, code assistant, use Amazon Q, you know, and it's like, you just kind of say what the requirements are and it like writes it, and it's pretty friggin' close with comments. I mean, what's your take on AI?
Okay.
There's a way too general question, but
so I mean, yeah, and we can talk about it from a couple different angles. I mean, just in general, we can talk about it, or we can talk about it specifically for coding,
or how you might be using it. Like,
yeah, I mean, I can tell you a little bit about like my experience with AI, which I've given a talk about it, my experience a couple of times now. UNCAA still does like a computer science day, and so I just recently I gave a talk on, the AI hype.
Nice.
And my perspective on it, and like to the students, and I was working at Roku when GPT what I never remember what it was like.
5
GPT-3,
just came out.
Yeah, it's like GPT-3, GPT-2. I can't remember what the number was, but there was it was when ChatGPT landed, and people were like, "Holy crap! It looks like this thing can code, right?" And it was like overnight we started having. Directors and VPs like, we need to be using like these things for all of this stuff. Just like anywhere we can, we need to be throwing AI at it.
And that's why I didn't even get on board this year. I was like, this is just hysteria. This is just a fad.
Yeah, but this was like, so this had to be like 2 or 3 years ago when we were looking for ways of doing things better with AI, and the API for ChatGPT came out, and so you could tap into the models and you could build apps on top of it. And so we were trying to do that internally. I was actually working in R&D at Roku, and so I kind of got into it. One of the things that we had to do at Roku, which I always thought was really dumb, was we had to create these like status reports at the beginning of every week of what we did, which then got sent to like our manager, who then like collated that and sent it up to like their manager, and it just kind of, and it was just a colossal waste of time, because like it was like, oh, I worked on this Jira or this ticket, right? And I opened these pull requests.
There's nothing I hate more than
oh my god, so bad. And I was like, that's what we need to do, right? Like we need to make it so, because AI could like just go out and talk to the Jira API and the GitLab API and see what all you've done, and then just produce this dumb doc. And so that was like the very first thing I'd worked
probably on. No one reads.
Right, and that's exactly right.
That's my thing. I'm like, so who's reading this?
So this is exactly my point, right? Like we spent a ton of energy trying to prototype this thing that would do automated status reports. But it never occurred to anybody that's like, don't make people write status reports. You'll increase productivity by an equivalent amount with zero engineering effort.
Yeah.
Just don't make people write those things.
Yeah.
And I think that was when I realized, okay, this is kind of this is gonna. I sort of felt like I'm not convinced yet. I still at the time wasn't using AI for coding, and I think the AI for coding thing happened a little bit later. And I will say, when I started using AI for coding, like actually asking coding questions, for me, it was a step function, fundamentally changing the way I work, especially.
Yeah, it pushes it up a level.
Yeah. Well, I wouldn't say that it was writing code yet, but where I say it was like changing the way I worked was that a lot of times my work involves research, where like I just have to like, I need to do something. I'm not really sure where to begin. So the way I would used to do things is like go on Google, maybe pull up some Stack Overflow things, and like kind of piece together some things that didn't really do exactly what I was trying to do, but they were close, and so I could like interpolate and try to piece those things together.
Yeah, which is valuable. I think it sticks with you more when you have to do that.
It does, but I will say that the first, when I started using AI for that aspect of my work, it was incredible. Like I was like, this is so much better. I'm never using Stack Overflow or Google again.
I know. I mean, the friction, like as a time management ninja, I mean, I think that is the main thing that computer science degree did teach me, is like how to think algorithmically and clearly.
Right.
And whether I'm just like sending out booking emails for comedy or clipping a podcast,
sure.
Like that way of thinking, you can be so productive.
Yeah.
And then AI is like a lot of that mundane stuff. Like you want to write an email to a booking person, I just throw in the badly punctuated version of it, and it bumps out one that's 90% perfect, and then I bump that up. So there's these little frictional moments where it's like, I mean, I've had such productivity gains. Like you're saying, not scouring through Stack Overflow. Yeah. And it can still lead you astray, but I mean, it's like that was happening anyway with the links.
Google could do that too, yeah.
So you still kind of, I've heard that like the juniors are being disrupted a lot, because those are the jobs that are being taken by AI. Whereas somebody that's more like senior, it's like you're just more efficient, and but it's changing so fast. Who knows like where it'll be in 6 months or 12 months?
So my perspective is it's not changing fast anymore.
Really?
Totally. Yeah. So
I hope you're right, because I'm terrified.
I could be wrong here. Like, so, please nobody make bets based on anything I'm saying.
No one knows. That's the thing.
But it like I said, there was that step function change in my productivity as an engineer, and then everything since then, right? Like for me personally, has been very marginal. Like,
are you using it like, there's what is it called, cursor? Like I haven't used that one. Do you? But one that can scan your code base, because if you're going out and you're asking ChatGPT over here and then you're bringing it back, like, do you use one that's integrated with your IDE?
So I've tried.
Okay.
No, I don't use one like Cursor, but I have used Codex from OpenAI. Okay. And I've used Claude Code from Anthropic.
I haven't used those.
Those are CLI tools so I'm an Emacs user. Yeah. So like I don't have like VS Code and the plugin. So I mean that's one limitation I have anyway. But Codex and Claude Code are both very they're designed to use from the command line, and you can kind of like prompt them and tell them what needs to happen. It can scan your code. It can run tools from your command line that we can do commits and stuff like that. So I think it covers most of those things that Cursor does. And
I use Amazon Q, and
I haven't used that.
And I'm working like it's all AWS. So it's like Lambdas and S3 and permissions and roles. So it's like it might be that I'm using a Amazon Code Assistant to do my Amazon code, but I mean when it comes to React and stuff, it's still like, I mean, it's scary how good it is. I mean, I still review everything and make sure that it's my voice, just like I would the email to the booker. Like I don't blindly commit things.
Sure.
But you got me on Vim, which is like, that was a huge, like to this day, I kind of model I do live coding in Vim, and I think that really kind of is a great way to show that you know what you're doing and make mistakes and debug. But so I'm using the Vim key bindings in VS Code. Even VS Code, I was like, I'm not going to use that overblown big operating system crap. But now I'm using it with Amazon Q, and it's just like the prompt that you give it, you're like, make me this form and base it off the patterns I'm already using. But then I can also be like, I need some infrastructure as code to write a Lambda, and I need a role, and I need a bucket. And it's just like, just spits it out. And I'm just like,
it sounds like scaffolding.
Yeah, I think so.
And that's, and I will say,
but I think I could mostly like, there's this thing where it's like, you're a human with some money and you want a web app. You tell me, and then I tell the bytes, and that gap, like the need for me, I mean, I think there might always be a need for me, but I mean, I think in a few years you can just say, I want a web app to do this, and if it's reasonably like simple, it might just happen. I mean, that's what I'm so curious about. You still have to network things together, and security is going to be a big issue, but I feel like the place where I'm translating between the requirements and the metal is like getting very skinny. Like, does that make sense? I don't know what's happening, but I'm like, something is happening. It feels like it's changing every week to me right now.
Everything you're saying to me is I hear it all the time. Yeah, and I mean, why do I still feel skeptical?
I want to be more skeptical. You
know? So a couple reasons, I think. So one thing that is true is for scaffolding, for like getting something up like that, and you just say, I need a Node app that does this very basic
Give
thing.
me a big boilerplate, and then I'll fine tune it. Yeah,
I feel like I feel like it's really fast at that. But scaffolding is not 90% of my work. I don't know if it is for most people.
No, I mean, it's very rare. But then when I go into pieces of it, it's like it feels to me like it's really good at that with this particular tool. But I still have to say exactly what I want. So like an average person, like a junior, couldn't say like, I need this role to do this with I know I need a Lambda. So I still feel like I'm I'm using my experience, but I'm saying it in English. Like it's no longer like, oh, I forgot a semicolon or whatever.
Sure. And so and I mean, so for scaffolding, I agree. It's fast. It's really, really good. I agree. But I will say scaffolding isn't most of my job. It's, not even 10%. So that I don't see that as being a productivity boost for me. The other thing I'll say is like, we've had good scaffolding tools for a long time. If you work in like Ruby on Rails,
totally, yeah.
The whole thing about Ruby on Rails over a decade ago was like you could build a blog in 5 minutes, right? And it scaffolds everything for you as long as you follow some basic conventions. So scaffolding is, to me, in a lot of cases, is kind of a solved problem. But totally. I will say that, granted, AI can do some basic like. Can take it a bit further than I think we could do before. But again, Ruby on Rails, like once you get past the scaffolding part, then the hard part starts, right? And that's where most of your bottlenecks are in software development. And so with like, for example, Codex and Claude Code, both of which I really, really wanted them to become like something I used every day, right? Like I desperately wanted. I tried, and I can already hear the AI folks what they're saying to me. They're thinking, oh well, this guy just sucks at prompting, right? Like he doesn't know what he's doing.
I think no one knows because I listen to podcasts and I listen to two experts who are like as qualified as anybody, and they say different things. It's it's interesting. But
my experience with like Claude Code and Codex, and they were both almost the same, except for Codex was I'd say 5 times slower than Claude Code. But like it was like, okay. When I, for instance, like find a bug, I can describe the bug to the AI, and very often it can find the bug. The amount of time it takes for it to find the bug sometimes is not super fast. It's unclear to me whether me just going through my normal debugging procedure. I've never done a controlled trial, but I will say that it always feels slow. And so I'm always like waiting, and I'm like, come on, this isn't that hard.
And that's friction in itself.
Exactly.
You're getting a little frustrated. Like,
yeah.
I could be thinking about this myself. I already got my coffee.
Totally. And granted, I can go do something else and then come back to it later, but that's generally not how I work. So maybe that's part of the problem too, but there is that. And then comes the problem of fixing the bug. And that's where I think it's so far my experience has been that it's bad, and that's where like it often suggests solutions that just aren't going to work for like a bunch of reasons that I can think of in my head. And so what ends up happening is like you go back and forth with it.
Yeah, I know that feeling. That's when you know you're stuck, and you'll even end up in a big circle sometimes.
Sometimes you'll end up in a circle.
That's when I go, all right, I need to go through this circle again and kind of write down each step, and then I can infer how to get us like out of this, like the record that's like ka-chunk, ka-chunk,
Yeah.
Like that's the feeling of it. And that's become part of my workflow too, is like we've gone in a few circles. So now I actually need to like step out and observe the circle from above. So it's still a different way.
So when I was in graduate school, I like worked on like the math, mostly the math side of computer science. And one of the things my advisor always told me about math, because he was more of a mathematician than a computer scientist, and something I still take with me was that good mathematicians that are really, really good at what they do aren't necessarily good at always coming up with a solution to a problem. They are very, very good and very, very fast at eliminating solutions to problems.
Right.
That's the skill.
Yeah.
And so
carve the block.
Exactly. Yeah. And so when I am like find a bug, like the types of things that I have to go back and forth with the AI are things that I wouldn't even like consider in my list of potential reasonable solutions, right? Because first of all, I know the code really well.
Yeah.
Second, I know where the code is going. That's another thing. I know what business requirements are probably coming down the pipeline, right? I can very like in the time that it takes the AI to propose a solution to the problem, and for me to respond and say, wait, oh no, that's not going to work because of this and this and this, I would have eliminated it already and probably been on two moves ahead.
Yeah, and you're just a little smarter and well equipped for the next one instead of like letting yourself get lazy too. So there's that kind of inherent. You have got me thinking about it a little bit more like when you first said scaffolding, I was like, well, the app that we've been working on is like it was scaffolded before I had AI because I I forked a repo and started it from there. But now I'm thinking, the nature of the work that I have been doing these past few months is I've really started to get blown away by it. It is a lot of like, I did all the original React forms and now I'm like, we'll do another one, but with a little bit like this. So in a sense, that is still scaffolding or saying like, well, now I need a Lambda that does this check. Like AWS is like, well, you're not imagining a new workflow here.
Right.
So maybe I am kind of still just doing things. I guess it depends on like what you're working on. If you're doing like different types of problems, maybe my next project will be a really different kind of like threaded systems problem where I'll be like, oh, there are limitations here. I was doing scaffolding. So you got me kind of thinking about it on a different dimension now, which I like. Because I don't want it to be really good, But I'm like, I'm not going to stop it if it is. So I'm very conflicted.
Yeah,
I'm horrified and excited.
And like I said, all the changes I've seen, like, and this is just my opinion, so please don't at me, AI folks, like, they've been very marginal compared to like that initial step function. Now, and it's also absolutely 100% true that a bunch of marginal improvements can lead to a step function. But like so far in my experience trying to use these things, I've never had another step function like that original one that I had. And I as much as I wanted to use Claude Code and Codex in my day-to-day, I don't anymore. I actually have also gone through the whole process of writing features with them, small features and sort of larger features. And in every case, and it could be like, again, no controlled experiments. It feels like I could probably do this faster if I was just doing it myself.
Is there a way to kind of, in a few sentences, sum up what you're trying to do? Like I'm building a React app that has a database and authentication, the classic kind of full stack app. Like, I don't know if that's too complicated of a thing to explain, but like what is this development that you're doing where you're noticing these limitations? Like, can you say a few words about?
Sure. I'm trying to think of one specific example. Well, one, I've been working on this thing that basically it's a CLI interface for Git, and it basically will show your Git log in a slightly different way that I'm more comfortable with from working at Facebook. So it's a really nice way of doing a Git log, and there was sort of an algorithmic problem there that when you're sort of printing out your branches in Git, like you want to be able to know when, so it's kind of like printing out a tree of your branches, like a visual tree from the command line. You want to know, like, as you're going through the commits, when to like move over and show the next branch.
Yeah,
right. And
sure.
it becomes
and screen width is
all that stuff,
yeah.
And it becomes an algorithmic problem that is non-trivial. And this is another.
This reminds me of something I did in your data structures class where we did like trees. We did like printed them out. I think that's the only time I've ever done anything like that. It's like using like backslashes and backslashes to
yeah, totally.
denote nodes.
Absolutely. Yeah. Same basic principle there. And that and I could never get a satisfactory solution out of the AI, in part because I think this like I am definitely, I mean, so like programmers like kind of are all very different, right? And I am 100% a hacker, like meaning that like I hate planning, I hate thinking ahead. I like
90s, man.
Yeah, I like I just like being in the code.
Yeah.
And like actually like making things happen and seeing what changes.
Yeah.
And then like just go iterating.
Oh, that's what I was saying. The way you taught it with you're firing up a text editor and terminal and just doing it is like that was like, whoa, I wish I could, that's the way I teach now because it's immediate.
Yeah.
And you watch the person troubleshoot their own bugs.
Yeah.
Putting up slides of something you did beforehand is cowardly because you're afraid that you're going to have to not know what you're doing in front of people. To me, that signals like a good leader of confidence when you're seeing live coding.
Yeah.
Because you're going to see them deal with panic and problems,
Yeah. And so
I'm like, I will follow this person if they're doing live coding. If they're putting up slides, suspicious.
But you can see how the difference, like for people that might get a lot out of AI, right? Because if you can't say in English, I don't know what I'm trying to do sometimes.
Yeah.
Right. I sort of like you were talking about like sculpting away, or when I was talking about eliminating.
Cutting more than you need.
Yeah. And that's the way I like to work. Like I have like a very broad picture in my head, but I don't really know how to get there. And I just sort of like mold it until it's doing what I want it to do. And oftentimes, like historically, what I find is that the design of the software, the thing that you spend a lot of time in your software development classes, like thinking that needs to happen ahead of time, it falls out of the hacking, right? And it just sort of becomes like well designed as you're like molding it, right? Whereas
and it becomes an experience that kind of lives in your DNA too. Whereas like anytime I've just copied code, like the scaffolding, that I don't know how that scaffolding works. So if that was ever a problem, I'd probably be screwed. Whereas like the journey of doing it and being frustrated, it's like it stays with you more. You know?
It does, yeah.
Even like using a YouTube video to learn a song. I think that when you have to do it by ear,
totally,
it's like it takes 3 times longer, but then it's like in you because of that struggle. So
absolutely.
That's a big deficit. Like with AI, when everything's just instant, and then you're like, you have to think of it a month later. Are we all just going to be idiots?
It's great you brought that up, because I've always felt like when it comes to like coding and guitar playing, I approach it the same way.
Oh yeah,
yeah.
You're shredding. That's the whole idea of using Emacs or Vim. Is like that's why it clicked
tactile
with me, and it's like I'm not. The mouse is like getting a capo. I don't know. It's like you're just like it's muscle memory. It's frictionless. Like dragging the cursor to and from, like that adds up. And it kills your whole day.
Totally. And
it's like changing tunings.
But it would be like the way some people go about software development. Where they feel like you have to design it up front before you even do any work. Then it's like feeling like you have to listen by your ear and transcribe it first before you actually pick up your guitar. And to me, like, I don't want that job. Like that job sucks.
Yeah.
But the people that do that front-loaded design, you can see why AI might be really good for them, because they solve for all the edge cases, and they can create these really well-defined prompts that have no ambiguity in them whatsoever, because they've spent weeks thinking about drawing boxes and diagrams and making sure that everything fits together right. Whereas, I don't do that, and I don't want to do that. And so like I don't, if I have to spend time explaining to the AI how to do this with no ambiguity, then the part of the job that I enjoy most is gone.
Yeah, right. Yeah, that's interesting.
And so I like that. That's part of the reason.
You would rather just get in there and like shred it than like try to say to a machine like it's like and I mean I think optimizing for joy is like a really good thing to just go for in life in general. I mean, what do you think about like as far as, because we're talking about coding, whereas like this is AI is like very few people are using it for that on the whole. There's this podcast, this guy Lex Friedman that had a podcast recently listened to, and he had like I forget the guy's name, but he's like arguably the greatest mathematician living today.
Okay.
And he's working on these like bleeding edge proofs and things like that. And he was saying, he's one of the ones that got me thinking like maybe I should be using AI. This is a few months ago. He was like, it's going to make dumb mistakes, but using it as a conversational tool, like back and forth, it's read all the papers, it knows all the things.
Yes.
So there is some use for like, they say old people are using AI like Google, they're copying and pasting a question and then going with the first response. Whereas like the way to really use it well is to have a dialogue with it and go back and forth. And then you still go do the work yourself to some degree, but using it in that way, like I think that's kind of do you see like that as being something that's growing?
So that was going to be my next thing about how to use it effectively, at least for me. Like in the old days, when I say the old days, I mean the pre-AI days. This was even like recent.
Yeah, like 10 years ago.
Software engineers, they had this concept called rubber ducking. Have you ever?
Oh yeah, I use that word every week.
Totally. That's where you for those of you that don't know, that's like where you have like a rubber duck sitting or glued to the top of your monitor, and whenever you hit a problem you can't solve, instead of asking your colleague or a friend, you ask the rubber duck.
Yes.
And by virtue of just asking the question, sometimes you can get the answer.
Like 9 times out of 10, I write the Slack message to myself so they can't all see I'm typing, and I'll really get it, good. And then 9 times out of 10, I'm like, well, I know what to do now.
Yes, exactly.
I formed the question.
Yeah, or you'll discover something you haven't tried.
Yeah,
right. That's another thing that happens.
Yeah, like a simpler version of the problem.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And so all like my view of AI is like it's just a rubber duck that talks back sometimes. And the other thing, like, and this is actually true beyond coding. I've used AI for a few different things over the last few years, and one of the things that I've discovered, or that maybe it's just me, I don't know if this is like something that's universally true, is it never really tells me something I don't already know to some extent, or something that like. It's kind of funny when, for example, people ask, "Oh, can you have a romantic relationship with AI?" Because like when I think of my use of AI, I would be like, "That's like asking me if I can have a romantic relationship with myself." And like there's something narcissistic about that, and so I think it's like, yeah, sure, you can be a narcissist, and you can like
if you're gonna set the bar that low for what romance is,
exactly,
I guess,
right? Yeah, exactly. So it's like, but I always feel like I just look at like talking with AI as it's just an extension of myself. It's a way to bounce ideas off of it in the way I would do with a rubber duck, but it talks back, right? And I think a lot of times, especially if you're like, one of the things I've done with it that I really like is like I'll do this like thing usually at the beginning of the week, especially when I get like really bogged down with a ton of stuff, and I'm just like, okay, at a high level, these are the things that need to happen. Help me make like I can't do all of this stuff this week. Help me make a set of action items that I can make progress on, and then it gives me those things back like quickly in a really nice format that I could then turn into like a nice to-do list, but it doesn't fundamentally tell me something or do something I couldn't have already done myself. It's just faster.
Yeah, right. Yeah, totally. Is removing the friction. Because I've even like, things have been tough with my job with like the climate cuts, and I'm like, raises and things are not. So I'm kind of like, but switching is risky because I'm traumatized by like the last startup, and my current place allows me to be a leader and I love the work, and I can do all the other things. So I kind of typed that into AI, and we had a back and forth about the different trade-offs, and I invested in that. I was like, this is like a very useful tool in this way, like a collaborative conversational tool.
Yeah, and it's just and if you just picture it as a rubber duck that talks back, or just like talking in the mirror and having a conversation.
But it still knows more than the mirror, though, because like
that's true.
Like I like reading 19th century novels. That's my thing, because I'm on the internet, like it's melting my mind with scrolling. So I try to read these books from where it's like, and they still hit, and I'm like, okay, well, that's really what being a human is, because all this crap now is like most of it won't really be around,
right, totally.
But a lot of times I'll read a chapter where there's like some nuanced moment, and I'll be like, what was I didn't quite, and it's really good for being like, Charles Dickens' Great Expectations, chapter 17, what was that? And it like knows, and it's like, or it knows that it's not clear, but here are some other. So I'm kind of getting that class discussion that I would want from like joining a group or something.
Totally.
So that's a thing that like I wouldn't. There's no way the mirror or the duck would have known that. But it's just it knows all the like popular literature.
Totally.
So then it's like, all right, now I'm just like back onto chapter 18, and I'm like not hung up on that,
And I love it for that exact thing too. I do it actually with I obviously really like music a lot. I'm really into heavy metal, but I do it with like albums. Mm-hmm. Like I'm still very much an album listener, right? Like I like love full albums, and I think like
Grandpa over here listening to a whole album.
I know. Like I like listening to a whole record, and I look at it as a piece of work, and I like listening to one album where there's themes repeated on the different songs.
Yeah.
And sometimes like that's
like a novel. It's like a larger work.
Yeah, it's fantastic. And so one of the things I love to do with AI is like I'll listen to some bands that I like or whatever, and I'll try to. Sometimes I'll like make hypotheses about like the connections between songs or the overarching themes of the albums. And then one thing I do with AI that I used to just never do, because like it would just be stuff floating around in my head, and I listen to so many bands that like almost nobody's ever heard of that it's like, but sure enough, ChatGPT knows everything, right? And so like I can like say, hey, there's this lyric in this one song that like feels like it ties into this lyric in another song on the same album, and I kind of feel like there's a connection there, and of course without ever any kind of hesitancy, ChatGPT is like, you're absolutely right. That's a keen insight, Semmy. You know, like good for you. You know,
the first sentence is always like, what a good boy you are with exclamation mark. And I fall for it every time. I'm every time. Validated. I'm listening.
It totally validates you as like a very thoughtful person. But I love doing that. And then diving in and then talking about symbols and symbolism and those kinds of things that I used to talk about in literature classes like you're describing. But I love doing with heavy metal albums, and I've never taken a heavy metal literature sort of course where you get to do things like that. So
that's interesting because I've only gotten into metal. I don't know much about metal at all, but I've been obsessed with drumming, and then I've been hanging out in tattoo shops. So those are two things that like
nice.
I'm like, all right, I think I'm kind of starting to like metal. Like what do you have like a sub genre? Yeah, I know. I'm like, why was I not?
Welcome.
Yeah, I know. It's have you heard of Hell? That guy?
No.
It's like MSW. It's this guy. It's like very slow. I guess that's called doom metal.
Doom metal is slow,
It's like somehow more terrifying when it's like, it's harder to play along with the fast stuff just because it's the ride is just like, but the kick's like,
yeah. I love pretty much all subgenres of metal. I love the fact that metal has these nooks and crannies in it and these like micro genres, and I mean as someone who generally feels good when I can like classify things, it's like a great genre, like broad genre of music where you can like, you know, like find pieces, and it's got such an interesting history, like and there's so many things you could talk about with metal. In fact, when I used to teach at UNCA, they used to do this like first year seminar thing, and I always wanted to do one on heavy metal, like just like a kind of an overview, some of the more interesting history stuff.
When you say Sabbath, like what's pre-Sabbath? Is that the beginning?
There was stuff before Sabbath. I mean, I
She's So Heavy. Does that count?
What's
that Beatles song? She's So Heavy.
Oh,
I was wondering, like, what I've always kind of wondered what the origins are. People usually say Sabbath.
I think Sabbath is like a good. The first Sabbath album is like a good. That's like a good standard.
Because that wasn't even that long ago. That's still like 50 years or 60.
Right? Yeah. So and interestingly, especially being in the 90s, there was this big resurgence of the Sabbath sound. I mean, it's like metal went off in all these different directions, and then in the 90s it kind of came, there was like this
more minimal, like just power chords,
or like Sleep, which just sounds like modern Sabbath, right? They're a great band, and they recorded some great albums in the 90s that just were like totally Sabbath influenced, Sabbath worship. It was like, let's just take heavy metal back to its roots. And so, you know, Sabbath was still kind of, and there's still the Sabbathy. I mean, Doom kind of grew out of a lot of that 90s Sabbathy throwback stuff. And so, yeah, there's lots of subgenres of metal. I'm really into, a lot. I really like black metal a lot, which is kind of like the sort of evil side, but still as historically has been kind of the, I think that it's a great subgenre. There are lots of really cool bands, especially modern black metal. They're doing lots of really cool stuff, I think. I like sludge metal.
I really like the sludge. That's I think Weed Eater. There's really only like 3 or 4 bands I know, and I just try to like, I'll put on like it's like more groovy. Like the one I've listened to the most, Vulgar Display of Power. That's the one.
That's Pantera.
Yeah, so I'll just, and that's early 90s. I'll
sludgy,
try because I remember. Well, that's more like groovy, I'd say.
Yeah,
but
definitely.
like I'll put it on and I'll just take one bar and just loop that, you know, and try to make a song out of that, because there's just so much complexity. It's just changing and changing and changing. But like I remember seeing Dimebag on the cover of guitar magazines all through the 90s, and I was like, there's no way. If there's anything I'm not gonna like, it's that guy. And like the people at high school that were just. So I'd never even listened to him, and now, like, you know, 30 years later, I'm like, he's the most amazing.
He's a brilliant. Yeah, he was a brilliant guitar player.
Like he's and it's like he's very, out too. He's like, it's like kind of jazz, and he'll be like playing something more typical, and then he'll just get out of the key, and it's just like some crazy clown for a minute or something.
Yeah.
There's like a sense of humor in there.
Yeah, Pantera always like bugged me a little bit because like at the time I was already really into metal when Pantera came out, and it felt like they were sort of one of those, I mean, like, you know, in the 90s how we were so protective of our music, like and you didn't want the football players and stuff to be listening to metal, and they were like would wear Pantera shirts, and I would be offended, right?
That's why I never listened to them, because I was like, the guys that would beat me up would have the shirt on, so I'd be like,
that's exactly. So yeah,
and now I'm like, man, but they're geniuses. Like
they had a lot of good stuff, but the other thing I really respect about Pantera is that they were very supportive of sort of the New Orleans metal scene, which a lot of the sludge metal bands grew out of, and they would take them on tour. Like Soylent Green's a good example of a band, and I Hate God is another good band that Pantera took out on tour in the 90s and exposed them to like larger audiences, which by all accounts those larger audiences generally hated everything they were doing, but at the same time, it was cool to see some of those underground bands kind of get a little bit more exposure through that, and
that is cool.
Yeah, so they were. I wouldn't consider Pantera a sludge metal band, but they were. A lot of their stuff was influenced by sludge, and they were very closely aligned with that. I think.
Yeah, maybe it's groove and sludge, or like to me that's a little bit like surgically precise stuff is just like I it's almost like the dark side of AI or something. Like I like it to be a little. There'd be a few like a little bit of swing in there, or a little bit of like humanity, you know.
Totally.
Like it can be kind of intimidating when it's just executed like. I think that's the reason it took me so long to get to metal, is because I've always leaned into my sloppiness as part of my style, you know, and metal is just intimidating where you're just like,
sometimes it can be pretty sloppy. You like Mastodon at all?
I just kind of know the name.
Okay.
Yeah. I know nothing about metal. That's like, I always have to, when I go like get a tattoo, I have to be like, I'll try to talk a little, but
you should maybe try them. They're one of these really like sort of solid bands that have never put out a bad album, at least in my opinion. And their guitar, they have a guitar player, Brent Hines, that kind of left the band on uncertain but seemingly not great terms earlier this year, and then he was killed in a motorcycle accident like maybe a month ago.
Damn.
Yeah, in Atlanta. But he in particular makes it very interesting, and you might like them because I see the Telecaster on the wall. But he had brought a lot of like he was born and raised in Alabama, and so he was obviously a banjo player, and like he brings a lot of this really really interesting playing to metal that like at least outside of Mastodon you don't really hear much of. And it's really
some southern
definitely
that's cool.
It's really really good stuff. But that band too, I mean, it's very accessible. It's very influenced by sludge.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, I consider their first album Remission to be a classic sludge metal album. But they got way more progressive over the years. And I've heard the drummer's dad works at Whole Foods and on Merriman.
Oh, hell
In fact, when Mastodon played here, when they played here last time, the drummer got up and he actually said that. So it's something I always heard, but then he kind of confirmed it. So it's kind of a weird connection to Asheville.
Yeah, that is crazy. Yeah, I watched a documentary like about the beginnings of metal, or I think it was focused on like the early 80s, and like Dave Mustaine, is that his name? Like playing with Metallica.
Yeah,
and then,
Dave Mustaine.
And then somehow like not winding up in that band, but his style was like, you know, and then he's like Megadeth, right? So then he like it created this other like amazingly successful band, but he's like always just like never sold quite as many as Metallica. He's like just all that drama. It was a great story.
It's great. Yeah, it's a classic story, and it's like it's a Dave Mustaine who's never come across as like a particularly likable person to me.
No,
like, not at all. Yeah,
but sometimes they're like this, like Billy Corgan. You're like, this is the worst dude of all time.
Yeah, but the story,
made some good songs though.
The story of like just like, you know, building a career on just like revenge there's something
It's
super
pretty metal,
Yeah,
right?
it's pretty metal. and I will say for me,
the Bible has stuff like that in it. Really, I
Totally.
mean, that's kind of like a tale as old as time. Like,
yeah,
just out of revenge being the driving force for art, or
absolutely. But like I like early Metallica stuff. I mean, I love early Metallica stuff up till Injustice for All, and like, but for me,
and that's when the bass player died, right? Wasn't that like
Master Puppets?
Okay.
And then, yeah, but Megadeth's Rust in Peace, like that one album is like easily my favorite metal album of all time. And like as much as I dislike Dave Mustaine in general, like, or at least the way he is portrayed, I've never met the guy, but
Stuart Copeland also on that list?
yeah,
It's like you're like, this dude's amazing. Then you hear him talk, you're like, oh,
yeah,
it's gonna be 6 months before I can listen to his drumming again.
totally.
He
Yeah,
offended like everyone, like me and reggae, and just
yeah.
There's some people are kind of like that. You know?
But it goes back to the software engineer like asshole
Yeah.
thing. You know, they're
Right.
always
most of them are pretty good.
yeah,
like,
but then there's these like one-offs that just happen to be geniuses, but
Yeah.
they're just like, they don't seem like they'd be fun to hang out with.
sometimes they're extra good because somehow they've made it to the level, and by being an asshole, it's like,
Sure.
because I kind of have to be nice to make it my
Exactly.
way into things. Like if I were an asshole, they would not keep me around.
Yeah, Dave Mustaine certainly has the chops to back up, like where you can like, it's hard to argue that he's not a good guitar player because he's an asshole, you know?
Yeah,
But-
I always just like the way you look too, because I don't really have much hair anymore. But he had like the red hair, it was like
Totally.
shredding. I was like, you don't see that a lot, you know.
Yeah.
And Axl Rose, I mean, they're the two biggest assholes of all time. Right?
No kidding, man. Yeah.
Talk about someone's legacy that hasn't aged well.
Such a Appetite for Destruction, such a great album, right?
Yeah.
Like, and it's amazing that.
Yeah, it's kind of metal, right? It's like pop music, but you know.
I mean, it's kind of an offshoot of of sort of the hair metal stuff that was
Glam,
happening, but
yeah.
it was kind of it was when, you know, that album was really good, I think, and yeah, we could talk about metal. I've often thought if I ever started a podcast, it would be about metal.
Yeah,
because that would be a really fun topic to talk about a lot.
Yeah, it's like optimizing for joy. That's like what we were saying about the coding part. That's what
Right.
this is. It's like, you know, somebody might watch it, but really it's just an excuse to have a fun conversation. Like there's people in town that I wanted to talk to them about their music, but I don't know them. If I was like, just come over and talk to me, they'd be like, that's weird. But I'd be like, I have a podcast. They're like, oh, cool. And then it's like, it's just this weird hack to just get into it, you know?
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I mean, it seems like a great idea. Especially, it's nice. There's a lot of interesting folks in Asheville, I feel like. And
Yeah.
So it's always good to give those folks the opportunity to talk about stuff. And yeah.
Yeah, I want more technology too, because it's like mostly comedy and music, because that's what my community. But it's like there's this side of me that like is really passionate about technology and coding, and that's kind of like not. It's interesting that my childhood friend Sheng Yang, he's just sold his company as a CTO, Logical, and he's the only other like tech guru I've had on, and he said almost he had the same feeling as you about AI. He's like, I don't think it, like, he has the same skepticism, which is interesting.
Yeah.
Because I think the average person who's not into technology is like, it's going to change everything.
There's
It already
plenty of
has. So
there's plenty of people that are good at tech that believe the opposite of what I believe. So
Yeah.
I wouldn't over-index on
Yeah.
that. It's kind of a crapshoot right now for me, though. Like with AI, it's like I'm more interested in like what can it do for me now, rather than thinking about what it's going to be like 5 years from now. But if I did like this sort of exponential growth thing, like I haven't seen it play out in practice. I mean, there's certainly like metrics by which like benchmarks that are where it seems like the AI is improving exponentially. But to me, that hasn't translated into like day-to-day work being faster.
Yeah, you're not saying that. Yeah.
But there could be a lot of different reasons for that.
Yeah, I mean, that's reassuring. It's like you're saying, if you're just moving divs around with CSS, maybe it is, going to do that for you. But so you have to keep kind of finding something that's more rare and valuable than an AI-able task. But
totally.
Well, we're at our quota. Should we wrap up on that?
Sure. Yeah,
okay.
absolutely.
Well, thanks a lot for coming on.
Yeah, man. Thank you for having me. It was really fun.
Yeah.